Hi, my name's Drew. I'm going to be walking you through the Soul Horizon today. We're going to start right up front here with the loading and unloading procedure. First up, we're going to kind of get some of this stuff situated here. So what we have up here at the front of the tongue is going to be your coupler. Now this latch is in the unlocked position, does have that unlock hold open there. So from here, we're going to crank this jack up, raise it up about 3 inches above the ball and drop. We're of course going to center that ball and drop underneath the coupler. Then we're going to lower that jack back down on top of that ball. Once we are fully seated on the ball, we're going to go ahead and slide this coupler up. What we're paying special attention to is that these two teeth here on either side of the coupler are fully engaged and resting flush within the frame there. From there, definitely going to be recommended that you get a secondary pin. Go ahead and pin this latch back. That's going to keep it from potentially vibrating loose or getting caught on anything going down the road. Now that pin is not included with your purchase, so that's going to be something that you have to upgrade, whether that be a lockable pin or just a spring pin. Either way, it's going to be our recommendation that you do go ahead and add one. From there, your toe chains will need to be crossed underneath the coupler. It is state law in Texas that these not only need to be crossed underneath the coupler, but they also cannot make contact with the pavement at any given time. So you're going to skate a line of having enough room to make your turns left or right, but not so much room that they may make contact with the pavement. Now riding right next to those chains is going to be your emergency breakaway cable. That's wrapped up here on the underside of the camper here. Let's see if I can go ahead and unwrap that to give you a visual representation of how that should look. Now your emergency breakaway cable is your last line of defense. So if these other couplers were to fail up front here, your toe chains were to fail, as the two vehicles separate, it's going to act like a ripcord to the electric brake system, essentially pulling this pin from its keeper, locking up the electric brakes to avoid a runaway camper scenario. Very important that you have a third connection point on the receiver for your emergency breakaway cable. Again, going to skate that line of having enough slack to make your turns left or right, but not so much that, again, this could potentially drag on the ground. Again, carabiner, quick link, this does need its own separate connection point onto the receiver. Again, this is something that is not included with your purchase. It is going to be an upgradable item. Your camper is connected to your tow vehicle via the 7-way receptacle here. This is going to plug directly into your bumper. This is going to give you full function to the vehicle's charging system, braking system, tail lights, marker lights, things like that. Whenever this is hooked up to your bumper receptacle, think of it at that point as one large vehicle and operate it as you should. So if you leave something on within the camper for a long enough period of time, it can leach to your tow battery, of course, leaving you stranded. So just keep that in mind. Up top here, we have this beautiful window. This is covered by the rock guard here. Very easy. If we go ahead and look at this cover here, you do have a piece of tube there, and that's going to slide here on the top of that C channel there. And then from there, you can see the snaps located all the way around. We're just going to go ahead and snap that on. So they are just some standard snaps. Very simple to use. Orientation, of course, is obvious because it only has this C channel keeper on the one side. So very straightforward stuff there. That's going to help protect that windshield. That's, of course, going to be in place anytime you're going down the road. It's a very expensive window. It's not something you want to take any rock damage. Hopping down below here, we have your 2 propane tanks. These are 20-pound propane cylinders. They will be full for you. When you do pick up the unit, you have an open and close valve on the top. Those tanks are held in there with a T-bar and an oversized wing nut. So to remove those for service, you're going to go ahead and undo the wing nut here. That will allow you'll fully remove that. From there, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the pigtails, remove that regulator, kind of slump it over here into this position. And then from there, we'll be able to go ahead and wrestle those out, take them to get service. Now again, open and close valve on the top, separated in between with a automatic switchover propane regulator there. when looking at this, whichever tank that arrow is pointing at, that's going to be your primary tank. Of course, the other one's going to be your secondary tank. If you have both of those service valves in the open position, it's going to use all of the propane within your primary tank and then automatically switch over to your secondary tank. All right, so here we have your propane cover. This is going to cover these tanks from any road debris, any rocks, things like that, keep the weather off of them. Very easy to install here. Just go ahead and line the bottom up with those rubber bumpers there on the bottom by the tanks. Allow those to transition through. And then we just go ahead and pin it there, very straightforward. We're gonna come over here to the other side and pin that one. As well. And there you go, very easy, very straightforward. Everything is nice and secure there. Moving on here to the driver's side of the unit, we have stabilizer jacks on all four corners of the unit. Now those jacks are to stabilize the floor. They are not for leveling. So if we're leveling from front to back, we're going to use that main tongue jack up front. Leveling from left to right is going to be done with the tires and what's called a leveling kit. Multitude of different options on the market. You'll do a little bit of research, figure out which you prefer, which you like the best. Once you are within 3 degrees of level, we're then going to come here with our stabilizer jack crank handle, and we're going to go ahead and run these down. We're going to come down, we're going to make contact with the pavement, maybe a quarter turn more. Now these jacks will stay in a lot better shape if you handle them with a light touch. So again, come down, make contact with the pavement, quarter turn more, just to sure everything up. Same on the way up. We don't need to bear down on them. They're not going to like work themselves down or anything like that. It is imperative that we do just use these to stabilize and not to level. Beside that, we have your sewer hose holder here. This is just a storage location for your sewage hose. Keeps you from having to store that dirty hose with any of your other stuff. So it does have its own dedicated location, which is a very nice feature. Beside that, we have your dump valve here. Now on the Intech products, for the most part, the gray and the black water share the same holding tank. So you are going to have one single valve and one single bayonet fitting here. Now this valve is in the closed position. If we were to go ahead and open it, it's going to be a 6-inch pull towards the rear. It's very important that we keep that valve in the closed position during operation, and we only dump as necessary. We're going to use the monitor panel on the inside, and we're going to inspect that tank level as it fills up. When it does come to dump, we're of course going to install our sewage hose here, and then we're going to go ahead and pull that panel, and we're only going to dump if that tank has filled up or we're changing locations. Bayonet style fitting is very straightforward. Your sewage hose is going to connect the very same way that cap comes off. You have 4 prongs along the outside of the tubing there. We're going to line the 4 keyholes up in the halfway position. We're going to give it a quarter turn. That's going to go ahead and lock everything up and make it ready for service. We have your furnace vent here. Now this is your 12-volt propane powered direct spark ignition furnace, and this is where it exhausts. It's not really what we would consider a customer serviceable unit. The very most important thing you can do is going to be protecting this from mud daubers and flying insects, number 1. And number 2 is, of course, since this is an exhaust, let it exhaust. We're not going to want to restrict the flow here. And it is, again, very important that we do keep the mud daubers and flying insects from not only nesting within the furnace, but from all of the propane burning appliances. Those insects are attracted to the smell. It's not a matter of if, but when will they intrude these appliances. Same kind of concept here with the refrigerator vents here. Again, not what we would consider a customer serviceable unit. The number 1 thing you can do is going to be protecting it from the intrusion of mud daubers and flying insects. The manufacturer has actually already screened that off for you, which is great. Keep in mind though that even with this screen in place, we're going to want to go ahead and remove it. We're going to want to give it a visual inspection a couple times a year. Make sure nothing has gotten in, make sure this screen is still in place. Other than that, other than giving a visual inspection, not really too terribly much you're going to be doing with the unit. All your controls are going to be on the inside of the unit, and it will stay in great shape as long as you do. Just again, remember to take a look periodically, make sure nothing's gotten in. Now when placing this vent in the correct position, you're going to feed it onto the right side first. So you're going to seat that properly first, and then we're going to swing it there onto the left side. And once we're seated properly, we just take these tabs and slide them down. I always go back, make sure I am in fact properly locked on. And that's all you got to do. That will be good for you until the next time you inspect it, which again is going to be a couple times a year. Tire pressure and lug nuts. Now these tires are going to run a 50 psi tire pressure. That's the max tire pressure rating, and for all camper tires, all trailer tires, you run them at the max tire pressure rating. So 50 psi, that's going to give it the highest flexibility in terms of weight rating. Whether the unit is completely full or completely empty, that 50 psi is going to be a good number. Lug nut torque is also an important thing to note. Manufacturer has a retorque procedure. When you leave our facility today, those lug nuts will have been torqued to 100 foot-pounds. Manufacturer recommends a retorque procedure. They first 10, 25, 50, and 100 miles of initial travel. It is very important that we do check and make sure those lug nuts are maintaining that torque with a click-style torque wrench. So we do want to make sure, again, that they are maintaining 100 foot-pounds of torque at those intervals. Manufacturer further recommends that at the start of each trip thereon after, we do again check to make sure they are maintaining that torque. Very, very important that you do so. The first time that you're taking this unit home is really the first time these tires have been on the pavement, and we do need to make sure they are maintaining that specific torque. 30 amp, 110 volt power supply here. Now your plug is wrapped up here, brand new. This is your plug, comes with the unit. 30 foot in length. Again, your cord there. Now, no matter the cord, it is only going to plug in one way. If we go ahead and unplug this secondary collar here, I can go ahead and pull that out. As you can see, you have one L-shaped receptacle there. You'll have that same fitting on your cord there. They should look very similar. But what you're going to do is you're going to line that up with the L-shaped prong there. We're going to give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right there. That locks it on. Then we do have a secondary collar here. We're going to screw down and lock it in further. My number one recommendation I can make for any unit that I deliver is going to be the addition of a 30 amp surge protector. There's a lot going on with these units electronically on the inside, a lot of sensitive electronics. You're opening yourself up to some vulnerability when it comes to substandard wiring, dirty power, surges, things like that. The number one thing you can do to protect your investment is going to be running a 30 amp surge protector in line. Generally, those protectors are going to hook directly onto the power source, and then your cord is going to hook up in line with that. Again, if you have any questions or concerns on which products to look at, or maybe further education on how to use such products, feel free to give our parts department a call. They'd be more than happy to go ahead and educate you not only on the importance but the use of a surge protector. Besides that, we have a ZAMP solar plug there. This is just a direct connection to the battery. What you're going to do with this is, of course, this is used to accommodate a portable solar panel, briefcase style folding panel. Really any solar panel with that Anderson style connector would be accommodated there. And again, that's just helpful if you want to go ahead and park your unit in the shade, run a secondary solar panel, keep those batteries tended, keep them in tip-top shapes, going to kind of extend your off-grid capabilities there. Beside that, we have a RG6 cable fitting. This is to feed cable service or satellite services to the inside of the unit. It's just a standard cable connection that passes through to the interior of the unit, terminates at the designated TV area, so very straightforward there. We have your water connections here. What we have here on the left side is going to be your potable water. What you would do is you would stick a garden hose directly in there. You're going to go ahead and fill it up till it overflows. Once full, Of course, we cap it off. Now, this is non-pressurized water, so what we do to pressurize it is we use the onboard 12-volt water pump. We flip that switch in the on position. That's going to draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures and make it usable. On the right side of that, we have your city water connection. Now, city water pressure is very important when we're utilizing these units. They're rated for a max water pressure of 75 psi. And it's very important that we do not exceed that 75 psi limit. So any water pressure regulator, one's going to be included. That's going to hook directly onto the water source. We're then going to hook our hose onto that. Of course, we're going to rotate this trailer bound connection to make that trailer connection there. Again, very, very important that you always use a water pressure regulator. We want to generally keep that in between 40 and 50 psi, but if you choose to go a little higher, just make sure you're not exceeding that 75 psi max pressure rating. If the water pressure regulator that we include for you happens to get damaged or unusable during service, any Walmart, any place with an RV aisle is going to have a replacement. And again, you absolutely do not want to operate the unit without a water pressure regulator for any amount of time. Beside that, we have your 6-gallon capacity water heater. Now, this is a dual source water heater. This is going to run on 110 volt electricity as well as propane gas. Those switches are generally there on the inside, so not much you're going to be doing here other than the maintenance stuff. So manufacturer has two very specific recommendations. If the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, it's very important that we purge all the water from the system. We're going to drain the water heater separate of the rest of the system because you're not going to be able to evacuate that water just using the low point drains and things like that. So very important that we do this properly from a safety standpoint. If you kind of fudge it, you're going to open yourself up to some possible scalding or burning issues. So number one, we're going to give it ample time to cool down, at least 2 or 3 hours. It is very well insulated. Once we are fairly confident of the temperature, we're going to then depressurize it. Now we're going to use the hot side of any water fixture within the unit to do so. Whether that's in the kitchen, whether that's in the bathroom, outside shower, whatever, we're going to focus on the hot side of that. So we're going to first off, we're going to cut the inflow of water to the unit. So if we're using a city water connection here, we're going to physically turn that water spigot off. If we're using the potable water here, we're going to go ahead and flip that water pump switch off. Once we've done that, we're then going to go to the hot side of, again, any spigot. We're going to go ahead and turn that hot side on. We're going to see that pressure be relieved there at the fixture. It may have some water too. Once we see no more water or pressure at that fixture, we're then going to come out here and we're going to actually drain the unit. To drain it, we're going to use an 1 1/16 ratchet and extension, and we're going to remove this drain plug here. Once we do so, we're going to see the remaining 4 or 5 gallons of water be evacuated from this location. Now, this drain plug is not only your drain plug, it is also your anode rod. What an anode rod does is it acts like a magnet for hard water deposits, calcification, things like that. They deposit onto the edge or onto the anode rod, eat away at that as opposed to the inside of the water heater. So it is a consumable part. Expect to get a year or two in between anode rod changes. You'll know the condition of it because it's going to start out about 12 inches by 3/4 of an inch. You'll know it's time to replace when it's about the size of a pencil and looks very decrepit. So on the flip side of that conversation, manufacturer does also recommend that when you're returning the unit back to service, it is very important that you prime the unit or feed 6 gallons of water to the unit. To do so, you're going to again focus on the hot side of any fixture within the unit, and instead of cutting the flow of water overall to the unit, we're going to introduce that. So again, if we're on city water connection, we're going to physically turn that valve on at the fixture. If we're using potable water, we're going to physically turn on the 12-volt water pump. Now, once we've done so, we're going to again focus on the hot side of any fixture. We're going to turn that on. Now, you're going to see a little different things here. Now, that flow at that fixture is going to be initially very airy, very spitty, very interrupted. What it's doing is it is displacing the air within the unit and refilling it with water. Once that flow normalizes at the fixture, that is your indicator that you do have 6 gallons within the unit, you can go ahead and choose your source and start heating your water. Other than that, this is again going to be a very large intrusion point for mud daubers and flying insects. When we take a look here at the cover, you can see you have some louvers and some grating. Again, it's going to be my recommendation that we further screen those off, keep any mud daubers and flying insects from nesting within the unit. Now when I go ahead and replace this, you've got 2 studs there. I'm lining those up with the corresponding holes. I'm going to swing this up into position, allow that latch to transition through. I go ahead and I give it a pull and rotate it there, and that goes ahead and locks it on. Moving on here, we have your large storage compartment here. Again, just a basic compartment. All your kind of bits and bobs, your crank handles, things like that will be stored in this location when you do pick up your unit. We have the rear stabilizer jack there. Of course, we have those on driver and passenger side. Operation is going to be the same as what we saw up front. Of course, here on the rear, not too terribly much going on in terms of function. We have your bumper, we have license plates, bracket and mounting there, marker lights, things like that. If we look low, we do have a receiver, a secondary receiver. That's great for like a bike rack or cargo rack, something like that. Just keep in mind that it does have a rating of a max 100-pound capacity. Definitely do not want to exceed that rating, so keep that in mind. Moving on here, we have your outside kitchen area. This is a very cool feature. You can go ahead and lift up, or excuse me, actually push it down, the locking tab, and that's going to allow that to swing out. Now first up, we have your griddle. Of course, you see no griddle on the top of that. That is stored away in a box. It does just sit on top of this. It is very straightforward to figure out. Now this does have a built-in igniter into the unit. So let's back up a little bit. We need to hook this up to gas to actually get gas to flow to the unit. We're going to utilize a quick connect style fitting to do so. So you'll see that here. We're going to take him down below here, and we have that corresponding quick connect fitting there. So I slide the locking collar back, and I'm going to insert the male end fully. So once I've done so, we were looking for that to spring back. We're fully connected there. I have this valve here. I'm just going to go ahead and turn that on the on position. That's going to go ahead and allow that propane to flow to the unit. Now when I go ahead and disconnect, I got to make sure, of course, I turn that off. It's going to be my recommendation that you do go ahead and turn that off anytime you're not using the unit. We're then going to slide that collar back and allow that to be released there. So once we've made that connection and we have propane flowing to the appliance, we're going to come here and we're going to hold it in this light position for a few seconds. Once we're confident that we actually do have gas flowing to the unit, I'm going to rotate it a little bit further until I hear that click. That's going to allow that piezo igniter to give it a little spark, and we'll go ahead and take it from there. So it'll go ahead and light up. From there, once we're confident that we do have it lit up here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our griddle on top of there. Now what we have here is going to be a 12-volt cooler fridge. Controls are going to be on the rear here. Now this is dual source, runs on 110-volt electricity as well as 12-volt. On-off switch is going to be here. And once I go ahead and turn that on, it's going to note a temperature for us. Of course, right now here it's in Celsius. If I go ahead and run through the settings there, I can change that to Fahrenheit. To change the temperature, you do just go ahead and use these plus or minus signs. Once it defaults back, so once I set a new temperature, I'll give it a second and it will actually default back to the real-time temperature, which is 73 degrees. So very straightforward stuff. If I go ahead and open this up, you can see here on the inside, you have ample storage for cold food and drink. You can really operate this anywhere within the spectrum. You can run it as a freezer, a refrigerator, or a combination of both. These work exceptionally well. You'll be very happy with the operation. Make sure though that before we pack it all up, we do buckle it in there. We don't want that moving around on us. And from there, we're going to go ahead and let this slide back in for storage. Make sure that that does go ahead and lock on the way in, and that's it. We have your sprayer port here. Now what you have here is a coiled sprayer hose. You can see you have a sprayer there. This is also going to utilize that quick connect fitting. So if we put everything in place, we slide that locking collar back, and this one you might have to do with 2 hands. Slide that locking collar back, insert that male in fully. Insert that male in fully. That's going to work just fine. This does all store within the unit. And then there you go, very straightforward stuff there. Now I have your crank handle here. This is for your Thule crown awning here. You're gonna go ahead and you're gonna insert that here. That's going to allow you to go ahead and bring that awning here into the out position. Of course, I'm not gonna run it out too far. We got some other things going on here, so that is just the operation. Once you come back in, you're going to lift up, give it a quarter turn. That's going to allow that to come out. Alrighty, so here we have a couple 15 amp all-weather outlets. This is going to allow you to power any equipment here all while enjoying the awning in this outdoor space. Plug in a boom box, whatever you got. Here's going to be your front step. This very easily slides up and in, and same on the way out. So you're just going to give it a slight lift. Make sure you're pulling it evenly on both sides. I can actually kind of throw it into a bind, what I'm doing here, trying to pull from one side. But it does move in and out very easily. Also a cool feature I love here on these Intex is going to be the hold open that they chose. That magnetic hold open functions very well. Is going to keep that door secure while you're going ahead and utilizing that screen door option. Very straightforward stuff. That just about concludes it here on the exterior of the unit. We're gonna go ahead and hop on the inside, take a look at those features. Alrighty, here right inside the entry door, we have your main light switch cluster here. This is going to be the single location for just about all your switches. So clearly labeled, we got your porch light. We have your exterior front accent light, which is going to be those beautiful blue lights above the windshield there. Dinette accent light, which is going to be the backlighting on the cabinets here. So you can kind of see that better with them open. You see the LED light strip there. And then dinette accent. That's the one we just did. Cabinet accent's going to be the blue lighting here throughout the camper. You have that forward and to the rear. Main lights are going to be the main ceiling lights. So that's going to be all of the lights except for the bedroom lights. Those are on their same switch, or they're on a separate switch, which is going to be the last switch that we see on that panel. So very straightforward stuff down there. Now if I drop down low here, we have your fire extinguisher. This is a very important part of your safety equipment. We're going to test this out every single time we take the unit out. We're going to push that green tab down. If it springs back, that means there's life. If it were to stay depressed, that means it's time to go ahead and pull it out and replace. Also here on this location, we have your GFI protected receptacle. This does have a test and a reset button. If you see that amber colored light, that means it's been tripped. It's time to go ahead and reset. So very straightforward stuff there as well. Behind my back, or I guess we'll start up here on top of the entry door, we have your carbon monoxide and your smoke alarm. Very straightforward, runs on a 9-volt battery, does have a test button. Again, with any safety equipment, we do want to go ahead and test it every single time we take the unit out. Very important stuff there. Moving even further forward, we have your cabinetry here up front. That's all very straightforward. We have your bed extender here, or how you would make this into a secondary sleeping area. Of course, you're going to remove the pedestal table, separate those pieces. Then we're going to lay that right here on right within this area underneath the cushions to make a very usable secondary sleeping area. We have the pull down shade here. Again, very straightforward, projector style shade. Very easy to operate there. We have lights on each side of that, reading lights on each side of the space. They come on blue. If we hold them for a couple seconds, they're going to turn to a bright white LED. The shades on the units throughout the unit are going to be the same. You have a one that will let some light in, and then we have a pull down shade that's going to block out most of the light there. Very straightforward. Generally with these, I recommend people to operate them one at a time. That's going to keep these tension bands from being stressed. On this wall here, fair bit going on. We have your fuse panel breaker box here. Everything there on the left side is going to be a light switch style breaker for your 110 volt appliances. Those are resettable. Should look somewhat familiar to what you have going on in your fuse panel box at home. Everything there on the right side is going to be an automotive blade style fuse. Those are replaceable. Go to the auto parts store, pick up a variety pack of fuses, keep them with the unit. Inevitably, you will need one at some point. Beside that, we have your battery disconnect switch. Now, this is going to isolate that battery for periods of long-term storage. It is a very easy location. Since the battery within this unit is in a sealed battery box, it's not the easiest to get to. This is going to help keep any nominal or phantom draws off of that system during storage. So generally, from the day to day, those draws are no big deal. Compounded over months of storage can wear and tear there on the battery. Now, battery is if we were to remove these cushions here, we're going to see a cutout. If we lifted up that cutout, you're going to find your sealed battery box within inside there. Again, it's going to be 4 screws along the outside. We're going to go ahead and lift that top off. We're going to be accessing that battery at least every 90 days. It is very important that we check the water level within that battery and refill with distilled water as necessary. Now, still looking here on this side, we have a charging section, which is going to give you access to a couple USBs as well as a 12 volt cigarette lighter style receptacle. We have a couple 110 volt all-weather outlets there. Nothing too crazy there. Coming up top here, we have your standard turntable style microwave. Again, nothing really too crazy with that. In terms of function, it's going to be very much as to what you're used to. And then dropping down here, we have your Jensen stereo. Now that is going to be AM, FM radio, CD, DVD, Bluetooth. All of those things will be utilized through this. And it does correspond with the television. So they are in communication. Whatever you feed here into the unit is going to essentially feed to the television. Other than that, very straightforward. Your sources are going to be here at the top. Of course, you have a ton of buttons. This does carry its own service manual, so if you have any questions, of course, consult that manual or feel free to give us a call. To the right there, we have your command control. This is going to give you a real-time readout of where your tanks sit, as well as your battery and level of full. So the more lights we see on that scale, the fuller whatever we are testing is. Battery reads full. Battery's going to read full anytime you're plugged into shore power. To get a true readout of where your battery sits, you're going to go ahead and unplug from shore power, and then we're going to test here. Of course, your tank levels are reading accurately. They both should be empty at this time. Then down here on the bottom, we have these toggle switches. First up is going to be the electric side of your water heater. Next to that is going to be the gas side of your water heater. Now, feel free to operate those to use both sources at the same time. That's going to give you the highest recharge rate. Generally, you're looking at 17 gallons per hour utilizing both sources. 15 gallons per hour if we use standalone gas. Last 11 gallons per hour using standalone electricity. So use those as your demand. Use it as you need to, or as those sources present themselves. We have a tank heater here. Now that's just corresponding with a little heat strip on the bottom of the tank. That's helpful if you are camping in cold weather. That's going to keep that tank from freezing. It's a very useful option, again, especially again if you're doing some cold weather camping. Water pump switch here, we already talked about that. That's how we're going to pressurize that potable water. We're going to draw that water up to the fixture and make it usable. And then we have your 3-way refrigerator here. Now this is going to run on 12 volt as well as propane gas and 110 volt electricity there. If we run through these, you can see that indicating we don't have the propane turned on up front. This may indicate to you, it's going to definitely indicate to you that at some point. Now, What we do to kind of resume function to this and get it to stop indicating is we're going to push that reset button. Once we do that, it's going to start that lighting process over. As long as you've corrected the issue, it will then go ahead and light up. Again, on the other sources, again, you just utilize those by pushing the buttons. We have temperature control here. The more bars we see, the colder it is, and then we have your on-off switch here. So very straightforward stuff. Down low, we have your 12-volt blower motor for your furnace. Now, all of your heat is going to come from this location. Is very, very kind of oversized for the unit. You're going to have no problems controlling the temperature in this unit with that unit there. Within the bathroom here, not too terribly much we need to focus on within the unit. Of course, you have your light switch here. We do have an exhaust fan. You're going to go ahead and crank this open. You have a 12-volt exhaust fan there that's going to help pull any moisture from the air if you're taking a shower. Shower here is going to have an on-off switch on the head. That is going to help you conserve water consumption, generally hot water consumption. 6 gallons of water doesn't translate to an exceptionally long shower. So generally, most of our customers find themselves doing like a military Navy style shower. Toilet down here, you've got a nice porcelain bowl. It will be a light press to fill up that bowl, full press to flush. Keep in mind you always want to use a single ply RV grade toilet paper. You want to use a deodorizing product as well as a tissue dissolver. All of those products are going to be introduced right here at the toilet. Of course, follow the manufacturer of the specific product that you're using's directions on how to use them. Generally, you'll put the product in here. You'll chase it with a certain amount of water, and generally that protects you until you dump, or that is the process until the next time. Some towel hangers, you know, some kind of usual suspects. Toilet paper roll holder there. Again, that's all pretty straightforward stuff. Here in the kitchen area, we have your cooktop here. Again, very kind of basic camping style stove setup. You have a spark or igniter, so what you do is you hold this to light, and then you hold that spark or igniter down till you, of course, see a flame there. Allow that flame to stay lit with your finger on the button for about 3 seconds till that thermocoupler heats up. From there on out, you can go ahead and rotate this to have a larger or smaller flame. You got to go ahead and pull up to close. That's noted there on the directions, so lift up. That will allow you to go ahead and close those, that lift top. Nothing too crazy here. We have a large single bay sink. Again, you know, very straightforward. You have different spray models there on the head, but again, a very cool, usable fixture there. Moving on down here, we have your max air fan here. 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of speed. You can open and close the vent from this location. Makes it very usable. We can, of course, turn the fan off. It is clearly noted here. Very important that we do go ahead and close that vent every time before we go down the road. We want to make sure we're not leaving it open. I will make the comment generally that it's something you only forget once because it's probably not going to be there when you get to where you're going. Now we have your thermostat here. Single mode button captive touch thermostat. If we go ahead and push this mode button, first up is fan speed. Low, high, and auto are our choices. If we go to either low or high, that fan is going to run indefinitely, whether it reaches its temperature or not. So we keep it in auto. From there, that's going to take us into the AC mode. It says that with the cool and the snowflake. Auto fan speed, we have that thermostat set to 55 degrees. If you want to change that up or down, we do so there with the arrows there. If we go one more forward, that's going to be the furnace. Once it kind of realizes what I'm doing, it's going to go ahead and click that blower motor on. 16 seconds after that, it actually ignites. By that 30-second mark, it's producing noticeable heat. Oftentimes in a unit of this size, it actually sets off the smoke alarm as well. Per manufacturer's specs, that is in line with operation. That is totally acceptable. As it runs longer, the efficiency of the appliance increases to a point where it should not set off the smoke alarm. So that is definitely within manufacturer's specifications. Other than that, up top here we have some speakers. We have a clock with a replaceable battery. We have your TV mount here. You can go ahead and see the release here. So that's going to be locked back. Of course, it's not properly in that position right now. That position is going to be something like that. Now, if we come all the way back, it's going to go ahead and lock in. We would need to pull that chain to allow this to come out, directionalize it towards the couch or throughout the unit. Now here we have, of course, a 110 volt outlet. That's how you're powering the television. Beside that, we have some aux cables there. That's going to be your connection. So essentially, this is your back of your DVD player. Your DVD player is physically over there. This is just a junction between the two. And then up top here, we have your antenna booster plate. Now, if you can see that red light right beside there, that's a switch. What that's controlling is the power to the onboard omnidirectional digital rooftop antenna. What that means is that that is on. We can go ahead and do a channel search. It's going to automatically search out the best signal and bring in that programming due to that signal. Now, if we're utilizing the part cable service adapter that we saw there on the outside, we want to make sure that this red light is off to allow that cable signal to go ahead and bleed on through. Also here in the rear, we have your emergency exit window here. Again, nothing too crazy there. Does have some latches there. If your entry door happens to be blocked, you can go ahead and flip those latches up. That will allow that full window to kind of swing out of the pane like a doggy door, essentially allowing you to exit the unit from that location. And then we have those same reading lights we saw at the front of the camper. We have a couple USBs and 110 volt outlets there as well. And then we have a secondary bedroom light switch that's going to, of course, control these two lights here above my head. That's going to keep you from having to go to the main cluster panel on the front to turn those on and off. Down low here, we have your carbon monoxide detector. Now that is a 12 volt appliance. There's no batteries to change. And that is part of your safety equipment. So it is very important that we do go ahead and test that every single time we take the unit out. It does have a test button. It's going to alert you which of those gases it is sensing by a series of lights there on the front. So make sure we're going to go ahead and test that periodically. All right, so underneath the bed here, we have your low point drains. Those are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. We're going to use those to drain everything in between water source and fixture. Very important that we do that anytime the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days. We're also going to drain the freshwater holding tank from this location as well. Now, that is all housed in this location. It's not something that's going to translate exceptionally well onto camera, but if I go ahead and lift this board up here and we can go ahead and see those valves, we're going to see the elbows where they transition through the floor, and we're going to follow the valve closest to that elbow and open those up to do so. If you have any questions, once you kind of remove the mattress, you get under there. If you have any questions on how to do so, again, feel free to give us a call. Again, it's not a process that shows up exceptionally well on camera, but we would be more than happy to talk you through that over the phone if possible. I think that just about covers it here on the inside of the unit. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We hope you enjoyed this walkthrough on the Soul Horizon. Thank you very much.